Hello, good morning. I'm Dawn Walton. I'm the founder and artistic director of Eclipse Theatre Company. We are based in Sheffield, which means I get my weekly film hit at the showroom. Okay, so Eclipse is a national touring company, and as such, we have no building. But I spend my life working with buildings, publicly funded buildings, regional theatres, which is quite often hellish, is the truth. I do understand buildings. I trained in buildings. I grew up in buildings. I was formed. I did say, it is true, I didn't go to the theatre until I was about 19, so I discovered theatre later in life. And thought, oh, well, that's really interesting. And then at some point later on, about 11, 12 years later, I actually found myself working in it and training in it and trying to start a career in it. But what was really interesting, I do get them. I grew up in them. I want to go to those buildings. So I did go to the Royal Court. I did run a department at the National Theatre. So I did all that really grown-up stuff. I've sat in all the senior management meetings, and I have completely heard all the reasons why things can't be as inclusive and as lovely as they should be, and we're going to try and we're going to talk about it and all that kind of stuff. I've sat in meetings where people have talked about, in an inclusivity meeting, talking about extending ladders down. I don't even know what that means. So, and then at some point I got really full and quite pissed off, actually. So I started a company. And I started Eclipse Theatre. I left London. I started Eclipse Theatre Company. And I started it on a really simple idea. And the idea is that Eclipse Theatre Company is all about audiences. So that's it. That's what we started with. So what I want to try and do today is explore with you how we embedded this practice into our organisation and how it drives what we do and what effect it has had on the buildings that we work with. And hopefully a little bit of that might be useful for some of you. Fingers crossed. So embedding. The first thing you start with is, what is the offer? Because regional theatres aren't making a good offer. People quite often, when they think about who goes into their buildings or who engages with their buildings, quite often talk about ticket price. It is my experience that ticket price is not always the barrier. It's because what's on offer is a bit shit. It's the truth. It's just not interesting. I don't want to see that stuff. I don't know why I'm coming in your building. There's nothing, I don't need to be there. I'm going to go over there or do it in my own community where I can see what I like. So that's the first thing. Our offer is actually really simple, Eclipse Theatre Company. We take stories from the Black experience and we produce high quality, middle scale touring work. So that's what we do. Then the thing I thought about was what relationship I want to have with our audiences, because we don't have a database, a box office where we can analyse it and do all that stuff. How do we have a relationship with our audiences, a long-term relationship with them? So I thought about having an audience development program. And then I looked at the audience development programs that were mostly available in buildings, and they weren't really very useful to me because the audience development programs in most buildings are about the buildings. They're not about the audiences. They're about how do buildings sell more tickets to audiences. So I started my own audience development program. And the audience development program, because Eclipse is all about audiences, are about the audiences. So it works roughly like this. This is sort of the short version of it. We started up, we go to the cities, we tour. So we go to the cities, we worked out in different times, but it worked out it's about 2 months before you tour to the city, we go take a little visit. So I send someone down there. And they take a walk into the city, usually into the areas of least engagement. And they go have a little chat. and they're looking for someone. The person they're looking for is the person who organises the minibus to take a load of people to some sort of cultural event. There's always people that do that in every community you ever go to. They do that. There's always exist. Even those people that don't go to the theatre actually have people that are in charge of the cultural life of various communities. So we look for those people. They're quite often youth workers, they're quite often hairdressers, they're all sorts of things, but we meet those people. And then we have what we call a Cultural Ambassadors Evening, which has Ferrero Rocher. It doesn't have Ferrero Rocher, you know. What it does have is some wine and some Twiglets. Because I don't really like Twiglets, but I don't really like Marmite, but somehow I like Twiglets, which is really weird. And we go to the theatre, the local theatre, who, by the way, none of those people have any relationship with, and we say to them, we're touring in a couple of months, so can we have a room and have an event, please? And they go, yes, although some really interestingly still say no, which I find fascinating for people that actually really genuinely want to have an engagement with their full community. However, we have an event. It's usually about an hour and a half, maybe 2 hours long. Here's how long the formal bit is, about 15 minutes. I talk for about 15 minutes. I go, hello, I'm Eclipse. I do about 5 minutes on Eclipse, do about 5 minutes on what we've been doing for the last amount of years, and then I do about 5 minutes on the show that we're going to be touring in a couple of years' time and say, look, there's stuff all around the building, all around the room. Help yourself if you're interested. And then I spend my time, me and the people that I work with, spend our time talking to the people in the room. What do you do? What do you like? Where do you go? What's your relationship with this building? And we get to know those people. And then this magic thing happens. When we come back in a couple of months' time, those people have been talking about our organisation, and they've been telling everybody about it, and they've been advocating for us. So they bring us group bookings, and we send that to the theatre and say, you need to ring that person and get money. And that's how it works. So we've been doing that for quite a while. It means when I land in Liverpool, I know that someone there runs a massive choir, and we should go. Phyllis there runs a massive choir, and we'll be seeing her at the show. I know when I land in Coventry, Lorraine will be there. She's from rugby. She brings a load of people in from wherever. I know when I'm in Sheffield, Pat the hairdresser has a group of about 40 people that she'll poke me in the arm and say, this better be good, because I'm booked for next week as well. And these are the people that we know, and they've been advocating for us for years. So, having had a relationship with all those people and working with them, I started to worry. Because actually, the thing about Eclipse Theatre Company is that we are the least funded middle-scale touring company in the country. It's a shock, isn't it? And so we can only tour, technically, once a year. However, so I was worried that those buildings that weren't very good at looking after, getting people into their buildings, what the hell were they going to do to those audiences when we weren't there? So I was worried about that. So I thought we need to maintain a relationship, because actually they'll just repel them back out the building, which is historically what has happened. So I decided we should have an online presence. At the time, I'm aware, by having the conversation, that actually what people were doing, if they can't see themselves in the theatre and they can't see themselves on the telly, apart from in Holby City, then they actually go online to look for themselves. So they're actually looking at YouTube. So I became this YouTube person who just spent my time just looking at YouTube the whole time, looking for content. And there was a lot of content, man. There's a lot of stuff on YouTube. And there's a lot of black content on YouTube, but it's mostly American, and it's mostly a bit shit. So I was like, I can do better than that and make some new stuff. So an opportunity arrived in the form of the Space. The Space did a shout out for people to apply for some money to do some stuff for the space pilot space thing. So I sat in a room with a bowl of porridge and a bucket and wrote an application, crying, and sent it off. And they gave me the money. And I went, I'm going to make 10 films. And they went, you're crazy. And I said, no, I'm going to do it. So I went out and found 10 writers. I invited them all to Sheffield. There were 10 black writers from 10 different cities across the UK. And guess where I found the writers? I found them in the Cultural Ambassadors. It's interesting, isn't it? Because cultural ambassadors attract artists, local artists who have no relationship with those buildings. So suddenly, and their experience, they might not be working in theatre, but they'll be making film, or they'll be writing TV, or they'll be working for radio, all kinds of things, or they're spoken word artists, all kinds of writers exist, but they just don't work in those buildings. And those buildings will tell you, if there was a black writer in this city that was good enough to work in our buildings, we'd know who they were. No, you don't. So, we brought the writers to Sheffield. We did a 2-day workshop with them. It was quite yoggurty, because that's what we do in theatre. I asked them to do one thing. I asked them to read a novel, A Rage in Harlem by Chester Himes, just because it's my favourite novel and I quite like it. And we played with the themes and the ideas of that, and then we sent them off to write short films. And I gave them, and they all looked terrified. And I said, what's your idea? And then they said what the idea is, and what's your idea? And everybody had an idea. Everybody knew what they wanted to write. Everybody had been stimulated by that workshop, which was wonderful. And we asked them to set it in their city. We asked them to have it one location preferably, but if there was a location change, it couldn't be more than 20 minutes away. It had to be a real place, a real location, no more than 4 actors. I think they were the parameters. And they found wonderful ways to break those rules. And then we filmed them all. I put a crew together, worked with a producer. By the way, I've never made film before at that point. And then I made 10 films. I directed them all over the country. And the whole process from beginning to end was 4 months, which was quite a lot of tears. It's really hard making film, isn't it? But it was wonderful. It was a really great experience. And we created a body of work that went from Middlesbrough all the way down to South London, Liverpool, Manchester, Wolverhampton, there's a list. And the body of work is called 10 by 10. And we put it up on the Space. And the Space looked at that and went, God, nobody else has delivered original content. We better go out and get everyone else to do it. And now the Space is actually what we did. We haven't been credited, but you can put that out there for me. We did it first. So that was a great experience. And then we took those 10 films, we did a year on the Space, and then we took our 10 films and we put it on our own website, and we launched something called Eclipse TV, which is very grand. And Eclipse TV was basically a way of creating content for our own website. So we had these 10 films, we had a small body of work, and then we curated, there's that word again, curated black content that we thought was interesting online. So things like Akin Saltfish and all those really wonderful black British work that was coming through. Found some Issa Rae stuff, Awkward Black Woman in America. Just really exciting, quality kind of online work. So we curated that through our site, plus individual works, and people started sending us stuff, and that's kind of Eclipse TV, and that's how we keep that dialogue going with our audiences. So that's the second thing that we do. But warning, if you repel audiences, you are likely repelling artists as well. It's a warning and a lesson that we learned. Good. So I went back to my cultural ambassadors and I said, right, so we've been doing this for a while. We're all feeling kind of cool. What is it that you want? And they said, we love it, Dawn. We love that you come and talk to us, but we want British work and we want more and we want it more often. And I went, okay then. So I then set about, there's a funding story, but let's not get into that, launching a project called Revolution Mix. Revolution Mix is a movement, really, that will culminate in the largest delivery of new black British stories. In regional theatre, it will have film, because we know that content is important to our audiences. And it will also have radio. Radio is really important for people because it brings access. there is a large population of particularly black and Asian men that are going blind in this country, and I know that because my dad is one of them, that lost their eyesight to glaucoma. Where's their work? Nobody's making any work for them specifically. So I wanted audio to be a part of it. Plus also, I kind of love a podcast, me. So we're making that work. We have 15 writers that we're working with. Again, black writers from all over the country. We have 12 partner theatres that are signed up to co-produce it. Some of them are really worried because they didn't know what the work was when they signed up. But it's coming through. We've commissioned 9 plays. We have 6 dramas coming out online at the end of this week. 6 radio dramas, short 5-minute pieces. We have a film in early development. And we've had loads of approaches from TV companies. I don't even know what the hell to do with those yet. We start touring that work next year. And so a program that big needs the largest audience development program ever. So we need a lot of people to do that. When I leave here, I've got to leave here today because I'm going back to Sheffield to prepare for 12 of our cultural ambassadors who are going to join me in Sheffield later on this week for a 2-day course. So we're now going back to our cultural ambassadors who already have the networks, who already have the relationships in and around those local theatres, and we're going to train them in audience development. And we're going to give them a job. We're going to pay them to do that work. So now, my hope is that the legacy of Revolution Mix is workforce. Because the other thing that repels people from buildings is actually going to a building, and the building, by the very workforce that it has, actively telling you that you're not welcome. You know what I'm saying? Do you know what I'm saying? Do I have to spell it? Please don't make me spell it. It's going to be horrible. So that's the other thing. If those theatres have any sense, they will employ those people because they're going to be really, really good. And we've got really great people to come down and train them. We've got Indigo coming to train them in data collection and all those really clever things. So we take what they instinctively do and we're now going to train them and make them audience development people and put them on the sort of path of a career, potentially, if they want to. So that's the next stage. So we've looked at connecting buildings with audiences. We've looked at connecting buildings with artists on their doorsteps. And now we're looking at workforce. What is the result of all this work? Well, I had a bit of work done recently. And it turns out, this is where I should have had a slide actually. But hopefully I've got your attention. Around 25%, I'm going to have to put my glasses on. Around 25% of the people attending Eclipse productions are first-timers when we tour. 1/3 of all the bookers for Eclipse productions return within 6 months. In Sheffield, where we live, it's 50%. They return and buy another ticket, not for an Eclipse show, for another show. 1/4 of the audiences at Eclipse Productions have travelled more than 20 miles to come and see the show. And then, this is my favourite bit. We hit higher than the venues we tour to in 2 main areas. One is more obvious than the other. The first area is low engagement. People that don't engage. We score highly. When the Eclipse show is on, we score really high at that point. But here's the really interesting bit. We also score highly at the other end. People that already go to the theatre, but they only go as they're experience seekers. Does marketing people know what that means? Yeah? They go because they want to see something that they don't normally see. They don't want to see another Shakespeare. God bless him. Do you know what I mean? They've seen lots. They want to see something different. Something that might change their view of the world. So we score really highly, higher than the venues on both of those sides. We've only been in existence for 6 years, and we can land like that just because we just took a really simple principle and put it at the heart of our organisation. So we are changing buildings. I'll just tell you one little story. Recently, I went to the UK Theatre Awards, and I only went, boast alert, I went to the UK Theatre Awards because Eclipse was nominated for two in two categories. The first category was for our last tour, was up for Best Touring Production. Thank you. We didn't win. The second category we were up for was for Promotion of Diversity, because they have one of those awards. And we were up for it. I was like, well, yeah, we're up for it. But we're up for it against one of our partner theatres. One of the partners in Revolution makes a company called, an organisation in Coventry called the Belgrade Theatre. And not only are they one of our partners on Revolution Mix, they have embedded a lot of our audience development practice into their organisation. They take everything that we tour. They also this year had a season of all black work, 3 plays back to back, which I'm not aware that anybody's done that. And if they have, let me know. And A Raisin in the Sun, our last tour, was one of that season of 3 works. And so they rose up, and I was like, well, it's fine, it's a win-win. It's a win-win. If they win, we win. And then when they called the Belgrade's name out, didn't feel like a win. It really didn't. Well, it did the next day, because I'm quite competitive, but it did the next day, which is the point. I think buildings have barriers, and I think you need to be aware of that. You need to own that and think about that. I think it's been really interesting that having a policy which is about having a relationship with our audiences, genuinely having a relationship with our audiences, has actually asked us to broaden our practice, to think about how we're delivering our work. So when I said at the beginning, actually, that I'm theatre, am I? Somebody asked me recently what we were. We make theatre, we make film, we make radio. We have an audience development programme, we have an artist development programme. Eclipse Theatre Company has become Eclipse. Thank you very much for listening.